Hi there, I'm Allison Kirak, owner of Stitch Real Estate Transaction Coordination Company, and welcome to my channel. If you are a returning viewer, thank you so much for watching. I hope you've been enjoying our content, and if you have, I hope you'll hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on anything else exciting and new that we have coming up. If you are new here, thank you so much for watching. Welcome to my channel. We talk about all things real estate transaction coordination in great detail and share other great real estate tips and insights as well. Any links or information you may need is linked in the description. Always feel free to leave me a comment if you have any questions. I will always get back to you, and I might even make a video to answer your question too. Video requests are always welcome in the comment section as well. Now, let's dive into the topic of today's video, which is all about how I process a new contract as a real estate transaction coordinator. Now, I have other videos, which I will link, that talk about in depth of what I do from beginning of contract through the inspection period, what happens after the inspection period, what happens right before closing, and even after closing. So I'll link those videos. But this video is really specific about how I personally actually process the transaction. So I'm talking about the steps that I'm going through in my transaction management software, in my personal processes that maybe the agent doesn't always see. So if you're an agent watching, I do think this will be informative and maybe interesting, but it really will be heavily TC focused. So what I do, first things first, in this scenario, we're gonna start, say I just received a new contract from one of our clients. I'm going to thank the client for sending over the contract, confirm receipt, tell them congratulations on their new deal. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to download that contract, and then I'm going to pull that up on one screen, and I'm going to pull my transaction management software up on one screen. Double screens is really huge if at all possible, or split your screen for this. Now, over the next few minutes and throughout the course of this video, you may hear me reference A-Frame transaction management software quite a bit. This is the transaction management software I am currently using, so I will go into some specific details, but please note that my process has always almost been the same on this in terms of the order I do things, and most systems are the same, so no matter what software I use, I have a really similar process. So if you're using a different software, don't discourage. This video is still super helpful. All right, now back to where we were. We've got our contract pulled up and our transaction management system pulled up. We've told the agent, thanks so much for sending it over. We got it, we're getting started. Congrats on getting this deal under contract. So first things first, I need to enter the transaction into my transaction management system. For me right now, that would be A-Frame. Now, each system's a little different, but they all should have an option to create a transaction. Then I will enter any of the basic and required information that's required to open the transaction. Each software will vary a little bit. Once I have that done, now I'm going to need to start applying my templates. If you watched the most recent video I made, I talked all about task templates and email templates in great detail. So I'll link that one here as well. Definitely check it out if you're not familiar, especially with task templates, because that's going to come into play here a lot. So first thing I'm going to do, I am going to do, most importantly, first my key dates. If you watch the task template video, just pause if you haven't watched it and go watch it for this one. You'll note that task templates play off of key dates in the transaction. So for example, my task template will tell me that I need to confirm receipt of the earnest money, and it will know to do that based on the key dates I put in here. So it's always really important, and this is something I go over with the coordinators, even on my team, we have to put the key dates in the system first, or everything else in the system, the domino effect, isn't gonna fall fully into place. And this is true with most software. So first thing I'm gonna do is use my key dates and input all the key dates for the transaction. Something unique I've noticed in A-Frame, but I have noticed in other softwares as well, is that you can use a key date template. So I was able to create a key date template that has the majority of my key dates. So at this point, once I have the transaction just open in the system, first thing I'm doing, I'm applying that date template. And then I am going to go in and update all my key dates as applicable. So the system, the way I have it set up in A-Frame, it does intuitively know some things like the earnest money due date and the title company due date and things like that. But there's some things that it doesn't know that I have to put in manually. So things such as when the HOA's due, if there is HOA, what's the survey deadline, if there is one, when does the option period end, if there is one, is there a seller's disclosure deadline, is there a buyer contingency deadline, things like that. So one thing I like about this too is it kind of has me go through that initial review of the contract. Because when I'm first going through a contract, I want to kind of get a feel for, is there something urgent I need to do? What's going on? What's unique about this contract, etc., before I dive in really deep. And going through and pulling all the key dates out of the contract is kind of a first step to notice if we have any super tight deadlines or anything like that. How quick's our closing date? Do we have HOA on this transaction? Things like that. So first and most importantly is I put all of the key dates into the system. With A-Frame, I use my key date template, but regardless what system you're using, there should be some type of way or for you to set up what your reoccurring key dates are. Now, this is just something super personal that I've always done. Even though my Google Calendar integrates with A-Frame, it will pop up on there what the closing date is. I always still go and manually add the closing dates to my calendar. I like to make them like huge, bold red as like all day so that when I'm looking at my Google Calendar, I can get a super quick overview of when my upcoming closings are. This is something I did long before Google Calendar integration became a part of these softwares. And it's just something I've stuck with because I like to see them stick out a little bit more on my calendar and be able to monitor them really easily. Just something for my personal tracking. Totally optional. All right, so once I've kind of gone through the key dates, the next most important thing I'm gonna do is apply my task template. No matter what software you're using as a transaction coordinator or even as an agent, you should have the option to apply a task template. The task template is what tells me what I need to do each day. So when I see, okay, I've got 50 tasks left to do today, the reason I know those are due today is because the task template that is intuitive to the system and the other information I put in there, such as the key dates. So once we apply our key dates, we need to apply our task template. Now, I have different task templates for buyer, seller, listing, for certain brokerages, for particular agents, things like that. So I will apply the appropriate task template. And then I'll just take a look and make sure all the tasks populate correctly and make any adjustments if I need to and clean it up. Some examples of this: if I don't have a specific cash buyer template, then I'm still gonna have lender tasks popping up. So I need to go in and delete those if it's a cash transaction. Another example, I will have something that says HOA deadline or check on HOA documents or order HOA documents. So I need to make sure, was that my responsibility or not? If it is our responsibility, were the seller ordering or the buyer ordering, then I might mark that as high priority. I might add some notes on there that say this is our responsibility, things like that. So I'm gonna go through and kind of clean up the task template just really quickly. We don't wanna use too much time on this right now, but basically remove anything that's not applicable, edit anything or make it high priority, add notes if something is our responsibility or is important or we noticed is a really quick deadline when we were doing that key date review. So just kind of cleaning up the task template, making sure that it's set up for success from the get-go. All right, and I will say on that note, when I first got super busy, I would just enter the transactions as fast as I could, and then like later at night, I'd go in and clean up all the task templates, and that could be tempting if it's your first time getting overwhelmed or handling a really high volume of transactions, but I can tell you from experience, it is always better to take the extra 5 to 10 minutes to set the file completely up properly at the beginning and not have to worry about later. It is definitely worth it, so that's how I recommend. Alrighty, once we have our task template in there, then the next thing I'm gonna go in and do is I am going to add all the party contact information. So when I created the transaction, and the way it works in most of these software is I put in my information and I put in the agent's information. Sometimes you have the option up front to go ahead and add the title company, add the lender, add the buyer or seller. But my current process, I just get it open with the bare bones information, and then now I'm gonna go in and add in any other parties that may be missing. So at this point, I'll add in the title company, the lender, I'll add in the buyer or seller, depending on what side we're working on. I'll add in the other agent to the transaction. Maybe if they had a transaction coordinator they noted in an email. I'll go in and put everybody into the transaction so I have their contact information right on hand. So that is the next step. So we're opening the transaction with all of the basic information required. Usually it's things like address, price, earnest money amount, anything like that. Then we're making sure all our key dates are in there. Then we're adding our task template, and then we're adding all our party contact information. Now, the 5th main step before I consider a new contract processed is to send out my introductory emails. So I will send out an introductory email to all the vendor kind of parties. So that's other agent, lender, title company, other TCs, anything like that. And then I will send a separate email to the buyer or seller, whoever our client is, with their next steps. So once I have all of the information input in the system that I need, I will use my email templates to send these emails out. So first of all, the introduction to all the parties, make sure they get all the information as soon as possible, make sure they've got the contract documents, etc. And then next, most importantly, sending our client, whatever their next steps email is, sending them their intro email. At this point, if I am very busy or have another appointment or something, I will consider this contract processed. I have set it up, I have made sure everything is organized for success, and I have sent everyone the contact information, the contract that they need, all the documents, and make sure they know their next steps. If I need to take a pause for something, start a new contract, something, that's where I'm gonna end it here. To finalize, if I do have time to continue working on the file, the last 2 steps I do on the first day. There is an optional third step if we need to make sure statuses have been updated on the listing. But the other main 2 steps I do is I'm going to review that contract in great detail. So I am going to, like I said, when we're entering key dates and earnest money and stuff, we're kind of getting a quick glance over the contract. We'll notice if something's missing or seems really off, but I always go in, ideally the day I get the contract or first thing the next day, and I do a deep review. So I make personal notes to myself about all the different aspects of the contract. And during this time is when I can notice, okay, does that city name spelling match up with what auto-populated my system? Does the down payment amount plus the financing amount add up? Is the county missing? Is there a missing initial? And I'll make notes to myself about all these things. If there are unique things that aren't typically part of my template, I might go in and update my task template or things like that, and really just do a deep review of the file. It's at this point, if I notice something like a missing initial, that we might go ahead and send that off for signature. If at this point something looks off in the contract that's a little funky, I might go ahead and bring it to the agent's attention. And the last main part of processing a new contract is getting it started in the brokerage compliance system so I can see what documents are missing or what we need to work on ASAP. Each brokerage has different timelines for this. So on some of them, it must be, within 48 hours or 72 hours or something. Some of them are a little more lenient. They just want it before closing. But I always want to go ahead and get started so I can get a good idea of what's missing and follow up on any other compliance paperwork we need ASAP. So that is an overview of how I process a new contract. Once all those things are done, I consider that new contract processed, and then we're just gonna follow up on all the next steps, the other tasks that pop up, and things we need to do from there. As I mentioned, check out the other videos I linked if you want more next steps. But I hope this gave you some insight in how to start a transaction in your transaction management software, what really should be included in that first 20 minutes to 1 hour of processing the new contract, and then when you can kind of be like, okay, this is set up, I can take a step back and move on to something else. Any questions about this, any A-frame related questions, want me to go into more detail about any of these items I talked about with the templates and applying and the emails and everything like that, drop me a comment below. Also, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss anything else. Thank you guys so much for watching, and good luck processing all your new contracts.